Welcome back to BlauDev. Today we're going to be going over how to update your project to include the newest packages and plugins for Flutter and Firebase, as found in the new firebase.flutter documentation. Let's get into it. So if you haven't seen, Flutter and Firebase created FlutterFire. It's a documentation website where you can see all the information regarding every Firebase plugin for Flutter. And this includes web and Mac OS support as well. Clearly right now there's not a lot of documentation and availability for web and Mac OS. It's mainly just for mobile at the moment, but it's something that they have voiced that they are working on, and so that's positive. But the big thing here is we now have documentation, something that has sorely been missing and is going to be a huge help for future development in Flutter. So I'm personally very psyched about this. However, if you've been using previous versions, then a lot of stuff is going to break in your project. And I'm going to use the project we've been working on as an example of how to update it. Frankly, I haven't even looked into all this yet, so I don't even know all the changes that will be necessary to make. But I'm just going to walk through it with you guys, and we're going to fix it up, and we get to see some of the new methods for working with authentication in Firestore. So let's get into it. So the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure we update our pubspec.yaml file. So there are 4 packages that I personally use in my project: Core, Auth, Firestore, and Firebase Storage. I didn't originally have Core installed. However, the updated versions of Auth, Firestore, and Storage utilize the Core library. And so the biggest thing is, in order for you to use Cloud Firestore, it requires version 0.5.0 or higher for Firebase Core. Auth requires, I think it's 0.4.4 or higher, and I think Storage is 5.0 or higher. And so you're probably just going to want to install 0.5.0 or higher for your project. I would check the documentation just to be sure. You can see here in the side menu for each different package that you want to work with. So let's pick Firestore, for example. Under Overview, aside from having a little preview on what it is, you'll see they'll have the latest plugin and the required Firebase Core version for that version. Okay? So now that we've updated these, so that's 18 for Auth, 14 for Firestore, and 4.0.0 for Storage, we're going to go ahead and run a pub-get, excuse me, I'm thinking of pub.dev right now, and we're good to go. So let's first go to our article screen. So you can see here we originally had a stream builder to read in articles. This is no longer going to work. You can't say firestore.instance, mainly because Firestore is now deprecated. So the new way to say it is Firebase Firestore. And then it's the same syntax: .instance, .collection, articles, snapshots. We will come back to this one. I'm actually thinking we might want to start on our login and authentication in register screens, actually. This is probably more pressing. Start at the front of the app and work back. Okay, so previously we had called Firebase user to get an authenticated user, and then we would say await Firebase auth.instance, sign with email and password, and then pass it the email and password. This is no longer used, so let's go check out the authentication. We'll go to usage here. And we want to scroll down to, let's see, anonymous. Okay, email, password, registration, and sign in. So instead of using Firebase user, we now use user credential. And you'll see here, it's the same kind of way to do it. You know, await Firebase auth.instance, create with email and password. But we're using this user credential object instead now. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Let's go back to, where did it go? Login. User credential. I'm going to remove this here, as well as that. Okay. And we should still be good. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and actually use this Firebase auth exception. So instead of saying if user is not equal to null, Instead, what I'm going to do is I am going to say, let's see here, I don't want to lose anything. It's going to incorporate it. Okay, let's do this. Paste it. Nope, nope. Yeah. Paste, okay. Okay. That looks fine. I'm going to delete this. Copy this stuff. So this was if the user authenticated correctly, right? So I believe I'm okay to just continue with my logic within that try statement. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. And you'll see here we have another issue, which is calling display name for a user. And the only change is that now we say, I'll delete this so you can see, it's user.user, and then now you can access display name and the other methods such as phone number, email, email verified, and so on. Okay. Okay, so that's it for our login screen. So we use user credential now. And now when referencing attributes of a user, you need to be sure to say user credential object dot user dot display name. Okay. All right, and then we handle the Firebase exceptions, and we're good to go with that file. Next up, we want to update our register screen, and this one's going to be very similar. Instead of Firebase user, we are going to use that same user credential. Okay, and instead of doing this .user thing, and then we have our exception handling. So put that right here through the catch, and then we can get rid of that. The next thing we want to do is we want to update the update user info information. So this is no longer a valid way for updating the display name. The way we want to do it now is we're actually going to use the Firebase auth user class. It has a method called update email, password, phone number, profile, and verify before update email. And specifically, we want to look at the update profile because that's where we can set the display name. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say, so we're going to say user, update user, that's fine, equals Firebase auth dot instance dot current user. I think that's what we want. The instance. Ah, that was all it was. Okay, I didn't need the parentheses at the end of current user. That's what was tripping me up. I was so confused there for a minute. Okay, so then we're going to say update user dot well, we should be able to just call the update profile method. Is that not? Oh, there it is. And then set display name to username controller dot text. Okay. And that should be all we need to do. We can remove that other logic. And it appears that we don't really need to worry about this. We don't really use it. Okay, we can leave that as is. Okay, so let's go to our video screen. We're gonna make the same change we made to our article stream in that we just call Firebase Firestore. So now the only thing we need to figure out is how to modify this line so that it is mapping documents as we did originally. So we can't just say snapshot.data.documents anymore, .map. It's looking for something different. So let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and do this. I want to see what's after data. Okay, so instead of documents, it's just docs. That's like a really easy change. Okay. Let's do the same here. And let's see what it's getting angry about with this. I think that's all I need to do. Okay. Go to video screen, let's do the same thing. And to really test this, what we're gonna do here, let's just do this. Let's say print URL. It's gonna be that URL. So this is still it's gonna crash because the values that I currently have in the database, like it's going to fail to render the image. It's gonna fail trying to render the URL. Like everything's gonna fail. So I'm not expecting this to work, but I am expecting it to print out test, which is the URL that we have for this test value for articles. So I'm gonna go ahead and spin this up. Okay, so I finally got it to build. I ran into some issues with my CocoaPods version. I had to actually upgrade it to the new pre-branch, so it's like CocoaPods, I believe it's like 1.10 or something like that. I had to upgrade my CocoaPods, and then on top of that, I failed to incorporate a key aspect to FlutterFire, and that is initializing the app. So you can't use any of these methods, such as create user with email and password or anything like that. You can't reference or use any of those until you first initialize your app with this little await firebase.initializeApp. And so I haven't tested this yet, so I'm not quite sure if it's going to work or not. I'm hopeful that it will, but let's go ahead and see. So let's say test user. And it worked. Okay, we're in. Okay, so this did work. Adding this in did get our create user with email and password. Obviously this is the register screen. We were just on the login screen, but I added the same thing to my login screen as well. So I added the same await firebase.initializeApp, and that way, regardless of which screen we went to, we would initialize the app either way. Okay. So what we were testing was on the video screen, we're going to print out the URL. And so here we are on the video screen. Let's scroll up to before where the error was. And we're looking for URL. The following was thrown in Stream Builder. Initial video ID. Where's initial video ID? URL. Okay, so, okay, here it is. I missed that. Just before the exception, it did indeed print out test, which was the value we had for the URL. So this is clearly working as well. Obviously, initial video ID, converting a URL to ID. I need to do some error handling to manage when a URL is bad, but this is all good, and we're good to go. So the important things to note, what we've done today so far, is we have imported our new dependencies for utilizing FlutterFire. And to reiterate, all of them require Firebase core. And the reason for that is you have to initialize your app before you do anything. And Firebase Auth, Firestore, and Firebase Storage all rely on Firebase core now in order to operate. The next thing we did is we went through and we cleaned up our article screen, our video screen. In our stream builders, we had, initially it was just Firebase.instance, or maybe it was Firestore. I can't remember what we called it before. I think it was Firestore. But we updated it to Firebase Firestore. Another thing to note is that you no longer say snapshot.data.documents, you now use .docs. And in order to reference the values, once we get our document, we have to say document.data before we reference our values. And so those were the changes there. On register screen, we are using user credential now, so that's new. And we have some updated, cleaner error handling, so that's been really nice as well. And all of this can be found on the FlutterFire webpage. So remember, it's firebase.developer or something like that. I'll put the link below in the description so you can see that. But those were the changes we made. And obviously there's a lot more to be done. On register, one more thing we also did before I move on is we established a user with the current user. And then after we did that, we ran update profile, which allowed us to update the display name. And I'll put a link as well to the user class. And that way you all can see the different methods and variables that can be accessed through that class. And then I believe that's it. There's a lot more to do. There's various different types of logins, such as with Apple and Google and Facebook. There are other packages that we can work with as well. But these were the only ones that I had been using so far in this app. We will get into using Firestore a little bit more here in a following video. And I'll probably do another video on a more in-depth analysis of FlutterFire, my thoughts, some tips and tricks and norms that you should follow. I am almost positive that there are way better ways to handle all of this than what I just did today. And we'll probably revisit that and see if we can make it more efficient. Maybe we can have some listeners and we can be checking the state of the user when they log on to the app and see if they are already signed in or not. We can do a lot of things better. And so we'll probably revisit that in another video. So stay tuned for that. If you found this video useful, make sure you click that like button and subscribe to the channel for weekly Flutter content. As always, I'll catch you guys next time.